Good evening, everybody. Now let's try it again. A little more energy. Good evening, everybody. There we go. How's everybody doing? We having fun? Excellent. So it's an honor to be here with all of you. And as Cam said earlier, you guys are the true warriors in all of this. It's the everyday man that actually makes the most difference. And woman. Don't let me forget that. But, I'm the executive director of a national organization, and while people think I'm important, the reality is that I wouldn't be standing here if it weren't for people like you doing what you do. So I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that and give you all a round of applause. And I want to thank Goal for inviting me to speak once again. I can't believe they did that. Apparently, lessons were not learned. Jim is hilarious, and Carrie Ann, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge her real fast. Last year, she spoke at our gun rights policy conference, and beforehand, sorry, I'm going to embarrass you a little bit, she was very nervous about it. And then I watch her get up in front of this room, and it's like it's natural to her. She has no problem. She commands the room, and she sings, and she has a beautiful voice. So everybody give it up for Carrie Ann. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention everybody at Goal, the ones that I do know, Mike Harris in particular. You guys are killing it up here, and Massachusetts is lucky to have people like you that are taking the fight to the legislature and not giving up. So with that, I got a few questions for you. How many of you have been drinking tonight? That's not enough. You guys are going to think this is terrible then. So the next question I have is, why haven't you moved to a red state? Yeah. No. This is good, because if you go on the internet says, well, just move. You hear it all the time with Californians, just leave. Well, the problem is if you leave, there's nobody left to fight it. And as a couple of people have said, A, this is my home, and B, cancer spreads. So fleeing does nothing. And there's one other thing that I think is worth mentioning that Jim mentioned, resolve. You folks have it. So with that, and now that I have a captive audience who's engaged, we're going to start our 2.5 lecture on constitutional law, and I see some of the lawyers in the room rolling their eyes. But I was actually going to talk about the history of Lexington, the Battle of Lexington tonight. And while it seemed ideal, I'm not sure it's quite right. So I'm going to actually talk about something entirely different, and that's community. Why was Paul Revere's ride so successful? It was because of community. It was because people had bonds with people that they lived near and that they shared information with and that they had things in common. Maybe they didn't agree on everything, but there was a sense of community. And that's something that's being lost in America right now. And oddly enough, I had written some of this before while I was sitting at the table. And then during the break, I had a conversation with Jim. And one of the things Jim mentioned was that clubs and organizations all over the United States are shrinking today. And that couldn't be more true. There's just no involvement in our community. And you can take that in any context, whether it's the local Rotary Club or whether it's, a gun rights group. I started reading a book earlier today called Bowling Alone. And actually, it is a book about this exact problem, and I've only made it a chapter in, so I can't regale you in tales about the lessons learned. But the reality is, I think we can all make the observation that community, they're shrinking. But there are people who step up and they do get involved, like Kendall. She's new to the board here at Goal. And we should all commend people for taking the time out of their schedules to actually try to give back. So I'm going to give you a couple of anecdotal stories. Maybe you'll take something away from it. Maybe you won't. But I'll start with one when I had moved back before COVID in 2019. I bought a house, and my neighbor's yard, there was a sign. It was a political sign. Anybody want to guess what the political sign was? Well, I don't live here. And it was a presidential election year, so let me give you that. It was a Biden sign. My new neighbors, one of them, had a Biden sign. And so we met one day while they were out walking their dog and said hello and chatted briefly, and that was that. And then we started chatting some more, and eventually they invited me over to have dinner with them one night. And, the wife asked me, "What is it you do?" I work for a nonprofit. That's my go-to answer, by the way. I work for a nonprofit. And so this conversation must have happened about 3 different times where we started becoming friends. We had a lot in common. I liked them, they liked me, and I didn't see the need to interject politics into anything because I want to be a good neighbor, a sense of community, right? So one day I'm sitting outside while we had just finished dinner, and the wife comes back up to me and she said, "Do you mind if I ask what you really do?" At this point, I figured she probably Googled me, so cat's out of the bag, right? Yeah, I work for a nonprofit. I'm a lawyer, and we do constitutional things with firearms. We're pro-gun. Oh, okay. And that was that. And just like that, where I had been very not wanting to share that out of fear of destroying a relationship with a neighbor over politics, everything was cool. And then I learned her son was actually very interested in guns. Now, he was about 10 at the time, and man, this kid knew everything there was to know about guns without ever really having touched a gun. So what did I do? I bought him a gun. That's right. I bought this kid a .22, and I gifted it to him with permission from his parents, of course. And I took him to the range, and we went through basic firearm safety, got him shooting, and he had a stupid grin on his face, and that grin was the same grin on my face when I was 12 years old, when I first shot my first gun. And that was at scout camp, and I grew up in a house that did not have guns. So from there, we went to the range a couple more times. He got to shoot some of my ARs and some of the other more fun things, and this kid is now a gun kid. And he will be a gun person as life goes on. I took him pheasant hunting as well. And so this is just one small example of building a bridge with someone where you think that there might not be any commonality. And then speaking of involvement, I really like shooting clays. I like the black guns and night vision and all that stuff, but shooting clays is probably one of the most fun things you can do. And so by me, I started shooting trap a lot because there was a trap club about 15 minutes from my house. And if you went to the club, one of the things you noticed was that the population was a little older, a little grayer, not really many young people walking around. And so the president there made an effort to get to know me and all of the members for that matter. But as I continued to show up and shoot trap, he said, you should run for the board of directors. You've been a member here long enough. So I did. I sat on the board of a trap club for a year. And it was just another way to get involved in the community and get to know people and learn a little bit about them and share some of the things that they need to be aware of as far as, firearms rights beyond $20,000 trap guns. And then lastly, the national community. So I've worked in the nonprofit world now for almost 6 years at a national level. And through that time, I've made friends with people all across the country in various states, whether it's California, Massachusetts, take your pick. But building a bigger bridge and sharing information is just one more example of how we can be impactful. And you don't have to be in the position I'm in to do any of this. You can do it right at home with your friends, your family. Take people out, take them shooting, show them why it's important to you and that it's not nearly as scary as they may believe it is. You guys are the key to building a community, so go do it. There's a community right here in this room. You guys all showing up just proves that. So that my message to you tonight is have an impact. Think about community and involvement, because if we all sit behind our keyboards and just yell at people on the internet, we're not going to be a community anymore. So thank you.